I'm here talking about designing for happiness in a complex world. And one of the big ideas is that of computational irreducibility. And it's essentially the idea that in a complex system you can't actually reduce the system, make it simpler, and then still make sense of the entire system. Anytime you make a reduction, you actually lose important information, that the entire system is the computation. And so one of the problems we have in design and business is that we actually simplify problems. We narrow the scope to something we can solve for. We then solve for that problem and celebrate our solution, but in reality we have no idea what we've done. Because in focusing on any particular problem, we've really just ignored everything else. And we've failed to engage with the complex realities of a world where everything is interconnected and nothing exists in isolation. And so while we solve for certain things, we also create negative impacts on other parts of the system. Unintended consequences, unforeseen interactions, and the cumulative effect of this can be actually disastrous for things like health. So the obesity epidemic, the global financial crisis, global warming, these things are the cumulative effect of optimizations of parts. And so I'm suggesting that we actually need a new kind of design where we begin to consider much larger sets of consideration. And while it's impossible to consider everything, even the very attempt dramatically changes the way in which we define problems, the way in which we prioritize things, the way in which we consider things a success or define things as problems. And one of the outcomes is I think, a new kind of focus on happiness as an outcome versus optimizing for profit and optimizing for smaller pieces of the system. I think the big thought is that first, to really make strides in wellness, in health, and kind of achieve some of the dreams that the audience here at Transform has, is we can't focus narrowly on any individual problem, and that the real opportunity is to consider much larger consideration sets, to kind of approach the consideration of everything. So anytime someone is working on a problem, to dramatically increase the scope that they're considering in the design of any part makes for some new and exciting directions, and I think helps us move in the direction of health and wellness in kind of meaningful ways. The other part of the talk was I've been doing experiments on the optimization of happiness. And the optimization of evolutionary basics as a way to achieve happiness. And I think one of the things that's interesting with this is when we optimize for profit, we have a lot of new products and services that promise us happiness, but in the end they're not really considering all of our needs. So a company will sell me an additional product or service, but they don't care if I had a square meal for lunch. They don't care if I had a good night's sleep or care about my relationship with my mother, all things that are perhaps much more fundamental to my happiness. So I think this kind of focus on the optimization of happiness becomes, through the consideration of everything, becomes really, really interesting, and again, new paths forward perhaps for health and wellness in some of the work we're doing.
So just small challenges, right?
Yeah, small challenges.